Hey everyone, this is Jordan with Food Bevy, and thank you so much for joining today's webinar. We're going to have a really exciting conversation with Marie, who is going to be talking with us today about really how to reach your high value customers without breaking the bank and various ways of doing that through sampling. I know getting your product in the hands and in the mouths of customers is incredibly important right now, and also more difficult with the pandemic going on. And so we're going to be talking about, how to go about doing that, why it's important, and ways that you can really stand out as a brand and as a product. So with that, Maria, I'd love for you just to give a quick introduction, and then we'll hop into a presentation. And then if anyone has questions throughout, please ask those in the chat, and I will ask those throughout the conversation to Marie. And then we'll also have some time for Q&A at the very end as well. So Marie, take it away.
Perfect. Well, I'll go ahead and share my screen as well. So hi, everyone. I'm Marie Chevrier. I'm the founder of Sampler. I've been in the consumer packaged good industry for quite some time. I guess my first job in the CPG industry was as a person handing out free product samples in grocery stores and on street corners. So I've lived the problem myself. And I've been building Sampler, which is a digital sampling platform for 8 years now. And we've been really pushing forward this space over those 8 years, and have seen such immense growth for the digital product sampling space in just the last 18 months, obviously with the COVID pandemic canceling many in-store demos. So my objective here today is to talk to you about what is digital sampling, how you can best leverage it, and also help you understand some of the big trends and key things happening in the market that are going to be driving your teams or the companies that you offer services to towards digital sampling, and why the shift is really happening. We're seeing basically the traditional space really pivoting to digital, and so want to help you understand why. So those are my goals today, but you'll see I'm a pretty casual person. So I would love you to use the chat to interrupt, if you will, and ask questions throughout, because the goal here is really for this to be two-way. So Jordan will be, taking a look at the chat and interrupting me where a clarification might be needed. So please do not hesitate. And there will also be a question period at the end. So we thought maybe the best way to start would be to get to know you. Thank you already for introducing yourselves. If you haven't, keep doing so. But we're going to pull a quick poll up on the screen. And so the question is, have you executed a physical sampling program before? So that would be in store, via events, or via direct mail. Okay, we have, seems like we're getting some people that are new to product sampling, which is awesome. I'll definitely be able to tell you why it's so valuable. Perfect.
Yeah,
right.
So it seems like there's actually a mix of each of those. So I just kind of closed it off a little bit here, but you can see most people, about 2/3 have done physical sampling, and about 1/3 have not. So definitely a good mix of people here in the audience today.
Good. And the second question we had was specific to digital product sampling. So the question is, have you executed a digital sampling program before? And what we mean by digital sampling is a program that would target the consumer online. So, that could include maybe offering samples at the end of your checkout or things like that. But ultimately, you target the consumer online, and you ship samples directly to their home. So.
And we'll give everyone just a minute to finish, or a couple of seconds to finish filling that out.
Oh my God, Sydney, your product sounds delicious.
So I'm a huge fan. I actually have some in my pantry right now, and just used some last night. So I'm almost out. So Sid, I'll be hitting you up for some more.
Sounds incredible.
All right. So in looking at the results of that, it seems like the majority of people have not done a digital sampling program, with 80% saying no and 14% saying yes. So I think this is going to be really a good conversation for them.
Perfect. And Jordan, you can see my screen good, right?
Yes.
Perfect. So because some of you are new to product sampling, I thought that maybe we could start with just kind of why does product sampling matter? And the best example I like to share when it comes to product sampling is that if I asked Sid, I'm sorry, Sydney, I'm already calling you Sid, Sydney, what makes her product or their product so special, I'm sure they would say that it's ultimately the taste or the touch or the ingredients or the smell. It doesn't matter which category you're in, you're going to answer it with ultimately an experience. You're going to talk about the fact that, it's that first time someone tastes it. You're going to talk about the ingredients. And I actually put that thesis to the test on my LinkedIn not too long ago, and 100% of founders answered with an experience. And so the reality is there is literally no better way than getting your product into the hands of a consumer to sell your product. It's just quite logical. But the reason, that ultimately brands haven't been able to get a product into the hands of every single potential customer is because traditionally sampling has been really, really hard to scale. If you take a look like at the first image here, the cheerful Costco sample lady is really a hard thing to execute. At the end of the day, you need people in stores handing out samples, and it can be pretty expensive. So in a store setting, the average cost for a table is something like $250 per table, and then you have to staff it, and then you have to bring the samples, and then you have to ultimately put a nice display. It becomes expensive. It could be as much as $2 to $3 per sample that you distribute in a low traffic store, right? So it can be pretty expensive. But for me, as the person who was in that store handing out those samples, the craziest thing to me was that we were handing out a sample to someone and they were walking away. We were really losing the opportunity to continue the conversation with that consumer the moment they walked away. So no remarketing is the largest challenge of traditional sampling. And so 2 quick facts. When you think about traditional product sampling and the way that sampling is done today, still today, 95% of samples handed out are done completely at random. It's to anybody who walks by. And when we measured how many times a brand was repeatedly sampling to the same person at an event, we realized that the average consumer was consuming 2.5 servings on during that activation. So ultimately, it becomes a really costly way of executing. And another thing that we saw is obviously with the COVID pandemic, many in-store demos were canceled. And what we're realizing is that not only that these in-store demos are not secure and that they have security concerns, but that consumers really are leaning into this concept of discovering product at home. They want to receive samples in their delivery order. They want to receive samples in the mail. They want to share in on these experiences with people at home. And they're really leaning into new ways of discovering product. And we've seen, like, for many emerging brands, this has been an opportunity to create change. If you're available, if you're easily accessible, you've been able to steal market share, right? So people are open to trying more than ever. What we've also seen, and I'm sure you've seen the stats millions of times, but we've seen 10 years of e-commerce growth in the matter of 3 months during the beginning of the pandemic. In the CPG industry, a recent study done by Cadent told us that the average CPG brand saw about 11% of their sales pre-pandemic being done online, and ultimately that grew to 18% as soon as the pandemic hit, right? So these are massive changes. So as your mix of places you sell is changing, so should your marketing channels. And your sampling channel is definitely one that needs to be optimized to digital. Another big thing is that data capture is one of the biggest benefits of digital sampling. And so one of the big things that's going to be happening is that Google is going to be abolishing third-party cookies. I'm curious as to how many of you are aware of that trend, and I might go a bit deeper into it just to make sure that you're up to speed. So today, the way that many of you are executing remarketing campaigns is by leveraging things that we call third-party data, right? So when you advertise on Facebook, when you advertise via Google Ads, you are ultimately leveraging an exchange that is built on third-party data. That means presumptive or probabilistic data based on many people putting their data sets together. So first-party data is data that you own, that a consumer is given to you, that is given consent to you, like your newsletter subscription. Third-party data is data that is derived from other people's data sets. Google is responsible for about 70% of website traffic, of web traffic today. And third-party cookies allow for retargeting. In 2023, Google is saying no more third-party cookies will be available on our web browser, on Chrome. And when they abolish that, that means that every single remarketing campaign that you're running right now, so for example, like let's say I'm on my cookie website, and I have a consumer that goes on my cookie website and I want to retarget them as they browse other sites, that will no longer be possible unless you actually have first-party data on that consumer. Does that make sense? So retargeting pixels are going to be largely abolished. So that is another big trend that is saying every single time you can collect data, collect data. So as an emerging brand, you're probably focused right now on getting the first few power customers, and product sampling is probably going to be part of your strategy for how you get those power customers. If you don't leverage product sampling as an opportunity to capture data, you aren't going to be able to continue the conversation with them past trial. Make sense? Any questions on all these big trends that are pushing digital sampling forward? Okay. So on top of that, we're seeing huge behavior change. And people often ask me, give me one second. My husband was way too loud in the back and distracting me. So the other trend that we're seeing is the willingness of consumers to bring products into their home. If I ask you where your product is best consumed, I'm certain you would tell me it's at their kitchen table. Maybe if it's a cosmetic product, it's close to the vanity. If it's a personal care product, it's close to the shower, right? Consumers are willing to take your product into the home right now. They're spending a lot of time in their home. They want to experience your product from the comfort of their home. They don't want to take an open napkin at Costco. So 74% of consumers polled have said that they prefer shopping and trying products in the comfort of their home. And that's a really big shift from people, really enjoying the in-store experience, really enjoying spending time in store. People are going in the store and leaving very quickly these days. So ultimately, all of these trends are giving traditional sampling a huge digital makeover and bringing the product testing experience direct to home. So What I want to do today is walk you through Sampler and how we execute on digital sampling and ultimately the benefits that it could bring. So by bringing direct to home, the sampling experience direct to home, you can actually ensure that you're reaching the right person 100% of the time. Basically, you can come to Sampler and say, I would like to reach consumers who eat gluten-free and live in Milwaukee. And we will be able to find that consumer 100% of the time. The second thing is you're going to be able to offer a safe and contactless way for consumers to experience your product without the stress of who touched the packaging, is it safe to take off my mask in store? And the third, and I think the most important for your long-term strategy, is you'll be able to gather consumer feedback, capture purchase intent, grow your email list, and ultimately continue the conversation with consumers. So I'll walk you through how our experience works. Sampler is a network of over 2 million consumers who have registered to Sampler across multiple different channels, but ultimately share on average 24 data points with us. So a lot of data. On top of that, we have reach that actually expands over 50 million consumers. So if you have a specific audience in mind and we don't have access to it today, we can absolutely go and seek it. Consumers log in to Sampler. This is a web app experience. It's on mobile here, but there's no app to download. They come to sampler.io, or we are also installed, or we're also part of different publisher programs. So like, for example, we'll work with In Touch magazine. We run the In Touch digital sampling program. So a consumer could land on the In Touch sampling program, and it would be the sampling inventory that Sampler has available that would be powering this, right? So it's our experience on other sites or on our sites. But ultimately, the consumer experience is the same no matter where they find us. They connect with Sampler and create an account. On that first login, they'll give us mobile phone number, email, first name, last name, gender, age, and then they'll also be asked different questions like whether they shop, and maybe like their diet preferences. All of these questions are going to be personalized based on the samples that we have available. So if we have a food product, we will definitely be asking about diet preferences. The objective here is to create a match. Think about us like the Tinder for sampling. We are ultimately trying to make sure that your own brand brief matches someone else's preferences, right? So that if Ashley is going through the experience and she's gluten-free, then she has the opportunity to say that and not be presented gluten-free products. And if a brand is looking to target gluten-free consumers, they can push their offer forward to Ashley, right? So our technology takes care of that matching process. Every single consumer self-selects the samples that they want. We put samples in a box. As you can see, there's 4 samples in the box here on the right side. What's really neat about this is that this is a shared box with other brands that are non-competitive. We will never place your product beside a competitive brand in our exchange product. Therefore, you can also reap the benefits of being together, because together you will share in the cost of fulfilling samples direct to that consumer. Clear?
Marie, that's one thing that's I've had a lot of brands talk about is the sustainability factor of shipping product to consumers' homes, because there's like the box, there's additional packaging, and so is this kind of shared method a way of kind of reducing down that like footprint per company?
Sorry, I got distracted by the other question. Can you repeat the question, Ben?
Yeah, no worries. I know a lot of brands are concerned about sustainability with shipping kind of samples to customers' home. Does this
100%.
shared model kind of reduce that overall footprint because you're kind of sharing it with other brands?
100%. 2 ways that we do that. First off, you're right. We're shipping together as a group. So, every single brand doesn't need to be doing a single shipment. But number two, our packaging is completely recyclable as well. So we can make sure that, that it is like as carbon neutral as possible in under that. So it's fully recyclable, but 100% that shared does that.
Okay, awesome. Were you looking at Brandon's question?
Yes.
Do you have an answer for that, or?
Yes, I do. So,
Okay.
so just to be very clear, so Brandon's question is, how will the Chrome browser determine what is first-party versus third-party data? So, I should be more clear. Chrome is abolishing cookies. So, cookies is the engine that you can place on your website, so that a person who visits your website can be recognized on other websites. So, so that is what's being abolished, and cookies is ultimately the technical way that was identified. So, just kind of look up cookies, and you'll understand the back end of it.
Yeah, and then first party data is mostly used for your own direct marketing through like your email services or other type of retargeting,
Correct.
using SMS or things like that, versus selling on another person's site or advertising on another person's site.
Correct. And when cookies do go away, there are two potential ways that we expect the ad industry to look at how they might identify a consumer outside of your website. It's either going to be via email, which is 90% likely to be the unique identifier, or mobile. Both are collected on Sampler. Does that make sense?
Yep. And then Shabani has a question kind of back to sampling. Do you do any refrigerated samples?
Yeah, so for refrigerated products, we have retailer specific coupons that you can take into a retailer store. So what we would do is, let's say you're distributed in Kroger in GTA, we would or Kroger GTA, that doesn't make sense. Loblaw in the GTA, we would find a consumer who shops at Loblaw, and we would distribute them a coupon for a free refrigerated product redeemable in store. So they would have to go to store to get it. We've done some refrigerated. The reality is it's really costly, and it's just doesn't fully make sense from a return. So coupons allow you to do that more cost effectively.
Awesome. Thank you. I think Steve has a question as well. Steve, do you want to hop on and you can ask your question?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm curious about email opt-in and versus email opt-out. What percentage of your, I don't know what you call them, sampler customers choose to opt in versus choose to opt out in terms of sharing their email with, let's say there's a CPG brand that wants to sample out, like what's that ratio split look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So 1 out of 2 consumers will opt in to your email newsletter.
And so is that like if the brand that's sampling, so like Justin's in the picture, they have the opportunity to opt into the Justin's email newsletter for marketing? Is that right?
Correct. Okay. Correct. And 1 out of 2 will opt in. Now, what I will say is that, let's say Justin's did get a 50% opt-in rate on their newsletter, and they wanted to capture the information of the other 50. We have another feature called the Facebook retargeting pixel, which you can place on your campaign, and ultimately you can leverage to create audiences in your ad set on Facebook advertising, right? So that's another tool, which I'm sure like many of you are using Facebook advertising. So you could exclude the people you can reach out via email, and then you could run a Facebook marketing campaign to retarget consumers who ultimately didn't opt into your newsletter. So they're not lost on the remarketing side.
Awesome. Steve, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I do. Sorry, I was on mute. What percentage of companies that work with you are online only versus in store? Because I'm looking at the, some of the different options that are in that 4 kit. And it looks like you can pick them up at maybe Whole Foods or, various supermarkets. So I'm just curious what that split might look like. Someone strictly on brand versus someone that's trying to drive traffic to their grocery.
Yeah, so large majority have both, and I'd say that those that are strictly direct are typically pretty optimized on their D2C. And what I mean by that is ultimately you got to think about if your only channel is D2C, are you going to require the consumer to go from one sample to like a 24 pack of your beverage? You got to think about like, is that too high of a barrier? But if you're really optimized and ultimately you have like, let's say a really good variety pack or, a good kind of like first purchase item on your e-com, you can be very successful at this. I'd say like it's either you have good distribution or specific distribution and we target your program, or you have strong D2C. Or you have all.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for the question, Steve.
Good. And by the way, Steve, you freaked me out for a minute because Steve Schwartz is my father-in-law's. So I was like, oh my God, my father-in-law, what is he going to ask?
Yeah, that's me. That's me. I'm actually, I just wanted to join the call and spy on you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
So I was like, he's very supportive today.
I have a very common name, and there's a composer named Steve Schwartz. I remember I went to a Cheesecake Factory once, and the hostess said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm meeting you. I'm a huge fan of your music and Disney, and I didn't want to disappoint her dream, so I just said thank you."
Thank you.
So.
Did you really not want to disappoint her, or did you want a free meal?
No, I didn't want a free meal. I just, it was about her.
It's about her. Love it. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about conversion, right? Steve, you were already kind of talking about like, okay, what does success look like? So, one of the biggest drivers of your sales right now is probably the population of ratings and reviews. And so what I want to say is like the first thing we will do when it relates to sampling on Sampler is we will reach out to consumers and ask how they felt about the product with a 5-star review that you can publish back to your website. So if you're currently using a integration tool like Yotpo or Bazaar Voice or anything like that to publish your reviews, we integrate seamlessly through that. If you don't have a tool like that, no problem. You can export the reviews and you can publish. We have publishing rights as part of the program. So we will collect ratings and reviews. So that's just like another really cool benefit of the program. Really good, like when you're launching a new flavor and you need to quickly populate, but also a really good way to keep recency of ratings and reviews, which we know is a huge driver of SEO. Secondly is CRM. So we talked about this. CRM means email newsletter, right? So how are you building your customer database? So not only will you on Sampler collect email, but certainly you'll be able to collect as well some information about that consumer, which you could see on aggregate. And depending on how you're targeting, you can actually append to your database. So a good example would be you run a campaign targeting consumers of Kroger, right? Really cool. You can upload that email list into your database and you could tag them as Kroger customers, right? So that next time you're reaching out to them, you're talking to them with a Kroger, CTA would be a good example. The third thing is a follow-up coupon. So our ultimate goal is to get that consumer to the first purchase. And, we can't guarantee it on every single sample, obviously, but we will increase the likelihood of that conversion by offering a follow-up coupon. So every consumer will receive something like that first screen here, which will say, hey, here's 20% off your first purchase of Off the Eaten Path, right? We'll also look for user-generated content. In every box that is delivered, we encourage consumers to post photos and to tag both sampler and the brand. And we share that back with you as part of your final report so that you can leverage it. But you'll also get tags, so your community managers can go ahead and share that and leverage that how they would like. And then the last but not the least is real-time analytics. So at one point you have to get away from getting feedback from like friends and family, and you want to get more mass feedback. And so this is a really good way to do it. I'll show you a quick sneak peek of our analytics dashboard. What you could see here is actually our newest feature, which is a ratings and reviews analysis tool, which basically allows you to see ultimately how people are feeling about your product. What are the key topics that they're saying? So for example, under the negative sentiment, you'd be able to organize, what are the key words being used when there's a negative sentiment. So it's AI powered tool that allows you to bubble up feedback really quickly. And what's really neat is you can overlay, and this is a new feature that's launching Q4, but you can start overlaying your reviews with demographics, right? So maybe you can start thinking about, hey, people who have a negative experience and talk about the taste, they're all gluten-free, or they're all parents for some odd reason. So you'll be able to take this information and analyze it a little bit as kind of your product sampling business intelligence tool. So a lot of market research teams are leveraging the tool for that as well. Any questions on the technology? That kind of sums up a bit of the demo. And then I was going to address the budget portion of this subject.
Yeah, how many samples do you typically like to suggest brands give out for directional information on some of these things?
Yeah, I'd say like a good, the reality is that a good research data set is like, between 700 and 1,000 responses, right? Is a good data set. So conversion to review is 30%. So that's why our recommendation is that you start sampling at about 3,000 units, just so that you can end up with like something like 1,000 answers. And also like just on the performance side of it, to really understand if something worked, having a broad enough data set is really important. So I'd say 3,000 is where we like brands to start. Having said that, if you're at a point where you're not producing that level, I wouldn't want you to be discouraged. Like you could come to Sampler with a mix of a digital coupon offer and also samples. So for example, some brands have said like, I only have 1,000 samples. I want to do them on Sampler, but like, let me also test a high value coupon offer, like a BOGO or a 30% special introductory offer. And that would be good. And then you can still get feedback. Those consumers who opt in for that discount will visit your website, will poke around and we'll be able to tell you like why they did or did not convert.
And then Marie, do you track conversion from Sampler to like a conversion on like a brand's own e-commerce site?
Great question. So that's a feature that's on the roadmap for next year, integration with Shopify, which like I'm assuming many of you use as your e-com. But until then, we can map against email address, right? So we would be able to confirm that this email address was indeed part of your sampling program if you shared with us ultimately like email transactions, like email addresses for your transactions for a given period.
And I think one thing that comes up a lot too, and I've experienced this with my brand, is there's a group of people who are just looking for free samples but have very little conversion. Do you filter that out at all, or have you seen that become a problem?
No, great question. So most of those types of consumers are coming from places we call freebie sites. Like I'm sure you've all seen Like my arch nemesis is Coupon Clippanista. Great website for discounts, not so great for strong conversion. So what we've done is we've created a scoring system, which actually identifies where consumers are coming from, and would exclude consumers coming from those types of sites. Now, I will say, we also monitor the frequency on Sampler because we handle like sampling for so many brands. I can tell you if a consumer has claimed a sample in the last 3 months or has claimed a sample in the last week. And frequency is something that we optimize for. So we optimize for a consumer to receive 1 box per quarter so that they have plenty of brain capacity to opportunity to like really enjoy your product and not like ultimately be switched right away to another. So certainly you'd tell your sampler representative that you would want, that you feel that, you would want to exclude that way, and we would be able to support that way.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and just quick story with T-Squares, we offered free samples of our energy bars through our website and just create like a landing page that's actually like hidden from the homepage. And we get like 1 sample request a day, which is like, okay, that's good to start. And then overnight, we received 300. And I was like, something's going on here. And so when we looked into it, they were coming from these free coupon sites and that reposted the link, and hundreds of people then requested a free sample who we knew were just looking for free stuff. And so that immediately kind of changed our strategy where we at least made people like pay for shipping or pay something, because just doing it on our own site, we got completely burned by getting taken advantage of by these free coupon sites. So yeah, we had a horror story with that.
That's a very important story, and it's probably one of the largest risks of doing it on your own. Like the same thing happened to me when I was first starting to develop Sampler, where we saw these spikes, and so that's why we developed this scoring system, right? So we know our users, we know that they're engaged, and in fact, we're launching more and more features to support that. So if you had like a specific engagement goal in mind, like driving CRM, we can optimize for that. So definitely talk to us about what your key goals are, and we'll help you optimize towards that.
Perfect.
Good. So one of the in the title of today's webinar, the title was how to reach high value consumers without breaking the bank. And I understand why, you would be interested in not breaking the bank right now, because what we've seen in market is obviously we're all dealing with massive supply chain pressures, right? I was talking to one of my friends who has this amazing energy drink company, and he cannot get cranberry juice right now. He's just unable to find cranberry juice to create his formula. So, these shortages are really impacting everybody. And what we're also seeing is there's a ton of shopper behavior change and shifts. So you're probably, reconsidering, how am I going to go to market? And it's really unknown, how long this pressure is going to be in place. So about a week ago, Sampler launched a product called Exchange Lite. Exchange Lite is a lower cost offering, which allows you to start playing around with digital product sampling for literally the exact same cost as handing out a sample randomly on street corners. So we've really been able to bring forward this space to an achievable cost. So there are a few features that are going to be not available from what I chatted about. So I'll draw on the main differences. But if your objective is to go after a broad segment, think about healthy eaters, parents, beauty enthusiasts, fashion lovers, and you want to reach at a national scale, so you're not as concerned about going to a specific demographic, So, potentially really good for early market research. And you want to collect consumer feedback, but you're not too concerned about collecting emails. And what you really want is just kind of the early product insights and ratings and reviews and driving consumers with your coupon. This will allow you to do this at a really low cost. The cost starts at about 70 cents. So, really, really low per sample. And so the main things you wouldn't get from the demo I just did would be the ability to own the email. And the consumer would have the sample added to their order as a surprise and delight. So the consumer is not hand selecting the sample. And ultimately, the consumer is within a broad demographic versus your ability to target more specifically on our main product, which is exchange. But for someone just starting to test into the space, this is a really, really good opportunity. And if you see that you're receiving results, you're receiving great feedback, you're learning, then you could turn on, our data features, and you could start building your CRM, and you can start going a little bit more targeted in your approach. But I'd say this is a really good way of, testing the grounds on digital sampling. So wanted to offer that up to you today. Any questions?
I feel like this is all really great info, and I love the insights that you provide, because I think that's what's missing from a lot of sampling opportunities is the data collection, and then how to utilize that data to make decisions for your brand, to really understand who your core customers are, who are the people that like the product, and then being able to utilize that data for future marketing efforts as well.
Absolutely.
But no, I think this is a really great overview there. Any questions, feel free to type them in the chat or use the raise your hand sample and you can jump on up. So we have a question. Do samplers pay for these boxes? So as a consumer, do they pay for the boxes?
Yeah, so great question. So absolutely not. The box is completely free. The value exchange here from a consumer perspective is that they're giving you data, they're giving you feedback, and we believe that that's a lot to ask of them. And you might be familiar with subscription box models where a consumer is paying. I personally worked at one before launching Sampler, and I will tell you that the feedback rate was so low because the consumer didn't feel like they owed anything because they paid for it, right? So in this particular case, the consumer knows that part of the value exchange is giving feedback, giving data, supporting the brand in how they develop their products.
Are your consumers required to give feedback on all the products before they can receive another box?
They are not, but they are rewarded with more sampling opportunities the more engaged they are.
Okay. Awesome. Other questions? We can open it up as well, just in terms of other questions on sampling and what works and what doesn't as well. So Ashley has a question. With your demographic feature, are brands able to focus on consumers in a specific region? Many of the brands we work with are in the regional grocers that have strong online brand loyalty in regions.
Yep, absolutely. So regions, absolutely. It's greater metropolitan area is the level that we focus on. So it would be GT, Greater Toronto Area, or Chicago Metro. So that, and then if it's a national grocer, what you could do is you could do Chicago Kroger, and then that would get you very specifically. Absolutely.
The other thing that I'll just add as well is I've seen brands use campaigns like this to really drive velocity in new store launches. So if you're opening in a Kroger in the Chicago area or Mariano's or so, and you need people in the store to get product moving, it's a great way to specify which area they can go to, and then that way your velocity numbers are much higher as well versus your product sitting on the shelf in a new store.
Exactly. So one of the best use cases for that is leveraging an in-store coupon, that redeemable in store, and tying it with a store locator, right? So experience might be, hey, I want to target people in Chicago. I target people in Chicago. I give them a coupon for Kroger, and then I share a link that says here is where the closest Kroger is, right? And we can definitely execute on that.
Yeah, I definitely know, like in my early days in T Squares, we like launched in Mariano stores, and we like kind of just sat back and I'm like, all right, let's see what happens. And like sales barely trickled in. It was
Yeah.
like, wait a second, you mean once we're gonna shelf, people don't just rush to the product and start buying it? Who knew?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so important, right, in your first 90 days with a retailer that you are moving product off shelf. So people are like, I've seen brands literally like growth hack it with this strategy, right? Like at the end of the day, the retailer just knows that, they're out of your stock very quickly, and that you ran a successful promotion, right? So that would be very well received from a retailer perspective.
Yeah, I think I've heard other brands as well who like send their friends and family into the store to buy their product, which helps move it, but at the same time doesn't actually develop customers. But this is something when you're pitching to retailers in terms of like, how are you going to promote the product? Everyone always has some like generic slide that says product demos and maybe like geo-targeted ads on Facebook or something, or promos, and it's not very specific. But if you can come in and say like, hey, we're launching a campaign, we're putting $3,000 behind it and specifically driving people to your store to move product, then they're like, oh, so you're going to do the work and have a specific plan on how to launch. Great. Like it de-risks the launch for me. And so it's a really great way to stand out.
And I'm so glad you bring that up, Jordan, because Sampler's announcing next week, so you're first to hear, but we've just launched a partnership with UNFI, and UNFI is actually developing like best practices for brands to move product off shelf, and they're leveraging Sampler for it. So yes, so that strategy is UNFI approved, and certainly like one that UNFI, if you are looking for distribution with them, would, as you said, find really innovative.
Awesome. So a couple other questions from Sophia and Anjali, they're kind of similar, but what's the recommended kind of sample size in the pack?
Yeah, so there are size limitations. I don't have those at the top of my my mind, but your jar sounds like it would be too big, and that doesn't mean we can't do it in a standalone box, but it probably is not super cost effective to ship a full jar of sauce. If we ran the math together, I think the recommendation would be to use an in-store redeemable coupon, just like for cost efficiencies. The ideal sample size in general is a 1 serving, or in food. It could be a 2 serving if it's a product that typically people enjoy with families. So we've seen like chip companies give 2, so that there's some element of sharing as part of the experience. If you're in the personal care category, this is food bevy, so we're definitely not in personal care, but then you might want a few applications. So you want to think about like, how quickly can a consumer get the key benefits of my brand, and if taste is like very quick. So the ideal would be like I'd say like a small snack size bag of chips, or a 1 serving probably.
No, I think that's key. And then can you also clarify the cost in working with I think it's your main program called Exchange?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you got to think about the cost of fulfillment, right? So that's the largest cost we're trying to add here. So it will range very significantly based on the size of your sample, based on how targeted you want to be. So it's hard to answer, but I would say like on average, the average brand will pay about $2 per sample on the primary program. Again, you got to think about your cost per acquisition right now on your targeted ads. And every single time you are trying to acquire an email, how much is that costing you, right? In this, for $2, you would be acquiring an email, you would be acquiring ratings and reviews, you would be understanding the consumer deeper. Like there's multiple benefits. So you can't like fully kind of just compare it to traditional sampling. If you are comparing it to traditional sampling, then Exchange Lite is going to be more in line with what you're used to paying there.
Yeah. And then that'll be in addition to providing the samples at no cost.
Correct. Just to be clear, yes, we are not purchasing the samples. We are distributing them for free.
And I think earlier you were kind of recommending for the samples between like 1,000 and 3,000 samples.
It would be ideal that your total sample size of consumers that you reach is about 3,000 to get any good level of data, but you can do that with a mix of digital offers and samples. So it could be, yeah, that's right.
Okay, perfect. So then Matt asks, when does Sampler integrate with Shopify for CRM purposes?
Today, no. But what we would do, Matt, is at the end of your campaign, we would give you an export of all of your emails, and you would be able to add them. If you would like, if it's an ongoing campaign, and we're doing this all the time, we can set up an automated transfer, which is not directly integrated with your Shopify, but that would allow you to like retrieve the CRM on Cadence. But that is on roadmap for sure. So stay tuned.
Perfect. And I think Danny had a clarifying question about your relationship with UNFI. Are you providing samples to the actual retail buyers, or is it more just a promo strategy to get the products into the hands of the end consumer?
Yes. Yes. So let me clarify. So UNFI and Sampler are partnering to help you leverage digital sampling as a way to show well, first, like, okay, let me repeat that. What we're doing is helping UNFI run direct to consumer sampling programs. So UNFI is empowering their list of brands that they work with to leverage Sampler to reach consumers. But what UNFI is also doing is leveraging the data on Sampler so that they can create better retail buyer presentations for the brands within their network, right? And what you're speaking of around, the B2B retail buyer opportunity is definitely something we've done before. It's not core to what Sampler does. So we've done it opportunistically, but we wouldn't be able to get your product in front of retail buyers today.
And then Marie, for the data, do you also share within the customer data, like where they commonly shop or like where they want to buy a product from? Is that part of the data?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can target a consumer. Like we classify consumers based on which categories they buy online or offline. And we also categorize consumers based on the stores that they shop at for different things like grocery, pharmacy. So that you could absolutely segment users that way.
Because Danny, what you could then use is that data as part of your retailer pitch email that says, to some degree, we sample 1,000 customers and X% are purchasing at your store or trying, love our product and purchase at your store. So we have a dedicated list of consumers who already shop at your store, who like our product, and we have their email address. So once we launch, we can email them to shop at your store to buy our product. And that's a pretty compelling story.
110%. And maybe where I would go even deeper is we all know that when it relates to retail buyers, we're competing for shelf space, right? So you're working in a category that is, looking to replace something else. So in my follow-up survey, what I might ask is a question like, which brand do you currently purchase in this category? And then collect information to say, like we are an effective replacement for X, right?
Yep.
So that's just one of the examples that you could do, but
And I also
whatever.
love what you could do is with that same question, if they say like none, then you can say, hey, we're a additional product that's not cannibalizing any of your existing sales. So we're bringing revenue into your category.
Exactly. So, you know, whatever you're like, I think like what the main takeaway should be from this is that obviously having direct conversation with consumers is valuable. Number one. Number two, offering an incentive for consumers to give you feedback is kind of a must, and product sampling is a really good way to do that, right? And three, digital sampling can't be just simply compared to like just the benefit of getting a product into the hands of consumers. If you really want to put it to work, you have to think about how can that fit multiple facets of your strategy. CRM, ratings and reviews, market research, retailer presentations. That's how you put it to work, right? So it's complex, it's hard, it's not easy. And you know, the opportunities are super endless. But what I would say is if you put your trust in our team, I can tell you Sampler's team is a bunch of experts that know how to drive these key objectives. So you tell them your top 3 objectives, they will optimize your campaign for that and tell you how to get the most out of it.
Perfect. No, this is amazing, Maria, and thanks for talking about it. And I think this conversation that we even just had at the end really elevates the return on like how to use these campaigns, because if you only look through it through a single lens, then it's limiting the possibilities. But once you realize there's 4 or 5 uses for the exact same data that can help grow your business, then the return becomes exponential because you're getting so much feedback from one process.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's so neat that you have an audience here of like strategists and founders, right? Because like in that power position, like you have the ability to bring all these teams together, like the CRM, the person who's in charge of CRM, the person who's in charge of retail presentations, like that type of stuff. Whereas like I see it in large companies where they don't have that accessibility. And so they are not making the most out of it, and it's being siloed in a department. So I'm excited about this.
Excellent. Well, Marie, thanks so much for joining today. If anyone has any questions, how can they get in touch?
So I'm a huge LinkedIn user. Look me up, Marie Chevrier Schwartz, and I answer every DM. So please don't hesitate. And otherwise, Sampler as a website is sampler.io. Yes, I think that stands for Indian Ocean, but tech companies do that these days. So sampler.io, and you'll be able to book a demo there or to get more information as well. Oh, thank you, Leah.
Excellent. And so what I'll do as well is once with the recording, I'll send out follow-up information as well on how to get in touch with Sampler if you have any other questions. And if you have any questions in general on sampling, how to use it for your business or how to take insights like this and implement it in presentations, feel free to reach out to me as well. And I'm happy to help you think through how to best use data around sampling, either in person, digital, and the entire kind of stack for that. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your Wednesday and rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.